Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of the Viking Chats. Delighted to be joined today by Mark McCorrie of GlueDog and Made Snappy 360. Mark, thank you for joining us today. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. And you?
Yes, good. Now, we're starting this like we haven't already been talking off camera. We obviously absolutely have. In true Viking form, we waffled on for nearly 15 minutes before I drew a line in the sand and went, come on, let's put this on camera. So, Mark, for those who don't know you and don't know your story, tell us a little bit about your life before property, how you and how you kind of fell into Made Snappy 360. Let's start with that bit of journey before we go on to GlueDog.
Yeah. So, my background, I was always very good at maths, so I got the highest maths score in the country when I did my A levels. I then went on to do maths at university, got quite a high score in maths at university, but at that point I was getting quite bored with these professors geeking out on maths, all this abstract maths that seemed totally useless, and started to look at how do we do something a little bit more interesting, how do I do something a bit more interesting and applied. So got quite interested in software engineering, and at the end of my university I could barely code, but I was applying for a load of coding jobs. And there was one job that came back to me that needed mathematicians because they were doing software that involved a lot of 3D maths. So they offered me a job based on my math skills, not because I was a good coder, and I effectively learned to code on the job. That company was called Delcam. They basically had a lot of software for the design and manufacturing industry.
Yeah.
So you'd have all the designers at manufacturing companies like Boeing and car companies and space rocket companies. There was that end of their heavy manufacturing industry used a lot of this software. And then we also had the other side, which was like jewelry, coins. So 90% of the world's coins were designed using the software that I was working on as well, like the 3D effects on the coins. So they really need mathematicians. So
that is a bold claim to fame. 90% of the world's coins have been designed using the software you're involved with. What a random and cool fact.
That was before I came along, but
now the truth comes out.
Well, these products have been going for like 20 years. So yeah, these products were started in the 90s. So you'd had 15 years worth of work done on them before I even came along. But I worked in 3D printing. What was that?
I said that's some serious legacy software you're talking about by now.
4 or 5 million line bits of code with 10 to 15 engineers on them. So these were beasts. These were they were started back when coding standards were non-existent. So there was millions of lines of really poorly developed code that we had to work with.
And so, so king of maths, a supreme mathlete, shall we say, designing coins and jet engines, or helping people design coins and jet engines. And then, of course, you made the totally logical step into virtual tour camera equipment for estate agents. So, how did that happen?
Well, what happened was I've always been quite a driven person. I've always wanted to start my own business. And even back then, I'd only been in the job for 2.5 years when I was always doing little bits on the side, trying to figure out how I'd end up starting my own business. I was looking to buy myself a house. I ended up looking at property investment, and I ended up falling into rent to rent. I don't know whether you heard of that.
Yeah.
So back up in Birmingham, there was quite a lot of people doing it. They would rent a big house, 4 or 5 bedrooms, split it into rooms and rent out the rooms. And I accidentally found one 5 minutes from my house. It was a 7-bedroom house. Rented it for about 900 quid a month, and I rented the rooms out for about £2,400. Nice. I had to pay the bills and stuff in the middle, and there was obviously expenses and empty rooms, but that was just one house. And then I just did another 24 of them. I ended up just building this portfolio.
No, not another 3 or 4, another 24 of them. Like it.
So I ended up doing that for probably 4.5 years. There was a 2-year overlap with my job.
Those kind of figures, did you need to launch another business? That sounds like a very tasty little.
It's not as good as it sounds. Like that was the headline number, but you had to buy furniture, you had to put in fire doors, you had to put in fire alarms, HMO licenses. There's probably a £8 grand cost per house to take on. So it's constantly recycling the money back in.
Right.
And then you start hiring staff and have an office. And so it wasn't quite as attractive as it sounds. And that business is extremely hard to step back from. I've never seen someone run a HMO portfolio and have it pretty hands-free. It's very hard to train someone on all the things that can go wrong with it.
Yeah.
So I ended up, I'm a software engineer running a business which is actually a people person business. And all it was maintenance problems, tenant problems, and empty rooms I had to deal with. It was just like dealing with problems all day long.
Yeah.
I guess like typical letting agents experience.
Do you know what? I think HMOs, for that reason, you get a heightened agency experience, because I think in a typical agency, like in our agency base, we don't do a lot of HMOs in that room by room. In fact, we don't do any room by room, but we do have a few houses which have a HMO license, but we always rent them as a single house. I think the thing with HMOs, you add in that kind of conflict of personalities, because you've got 7 or whatever, you've got 7 rooms, you've got 7 unrelated, unconnected people, and the dice roll that is. Whereas when we put tenants in, on a year, 4 tenants in a year on a contract together, they've got to work it out. Or, they do a change of tenant, but they can't stand there and piss and moan and point fingers at each other, because they're jointly and severally liable for everything that happens. And I think that's the challenge with HMOs. You can leverage more money out of them, but with it comes quite a lot more responsibility in terms of that tenant management role and aspect. And as you highlighted, like the turnover of rooms and et cetera, et cetera. So you're out of the rent-to-rent game now.
I got totally out of that.
Oh, we lost you a bit there, Mark. Say that again.
2019, I got totally out of that. So I've been doing it about 4.5 years. I realized my skill set wasn't being utilized. I'm a software engineer running a people person business, but I was running my own business. It was a good step in the right direction. I learned a lot running that business about property. It taught me a lot about business, but also about the property market. And that was how I was able to then start building tech for it. But while I was doing that, I was always tinkering with bits of tech for myself. So I built myself a HMO CRM.
Nice.
Because there wasn't really anything on the market at the time that I thought was very good. I think the systems at that point were quite new. So there was Arthur Online, but I think it wasn't that well developed yet at the time. Built virtual tours for my agency.
Or did you kind of close that with the business?
Well, it was the first time I built cloud software, so it wasn't very good. I'm a desktop engineer, moved it to the cloud, like moving to the cloud. So it was a bit of built it for my business.
It served you well, but yeah. And before we get on to why you started Made Snappy, this desire, because you've talked about it earlier on in your career, this desire to have your own business. Did you grow up with parents who were entrepreneurial, or was there anything kind of historically that was kind of in your kind of personality or DNA to do that, or was that just something that was always just there, no rhyme, no reason?
I think 2 things. My dad always talked about starting a business, but he never did. He was always, I could do that, I could have done that. So I had that for a long time, but he didn't actually do it. And then the second thing was I've always had quite a strong sense of purpose and wanted to build something and make a difference. And I don't feel like that business was doing that, but that is part of the drive of running businesses, to try and solve problems.
Yeah.
And that's the only way I felt like I could do it. So Made Snappy, the reason I started that was to solve a problem I had in my previous agency. Blue Dog, the reason I started that was to solve a problem I had at Made Snappy. And so it's very
Blue Dog. Yeah, we're still solving the main stories. I still don't get how we quite got from rent to rent to Made Snappy. So what you said you were doing stuff on the side. Mm-hmm. So how did that evolve into actually going, right, now this is going to be a bona fide business, and this is
So while I was at my lettings HMO business, I was often driving across Birmingham to do viewings. At that point, you had to do quite a lot of work to fill rooms. You had to be quite accommodating to the tenants, because it was more of a tenant market than rooms market. So I often found myself driving 7 o'clock at night after the traffic had died down all the way across Birmingham for a viewing. And sometimes people would just turn up and say, don't like it. But they'd seen the photos online, but they just don't give you that. Or they wouldn't even turn up. So I was getting a little bit frustrated with these waste of time viewings. It felt like it was wasting my time and their time as well.
Yeah.
That's where the virtual tours came about. So my brother he was a photographer, he showed me a 360 camera and realized we could put it together into one of these tours. So we went and we did virtual tours of all of the properties.
Yeah.
And what I started doing was someone inquired about a room first and asking to book a viewing. First thing I'd do is I'd send them a link and they'd look at the link and they'd say, oh no, the room's a bit small. Have you got something bigger? I'd send them a bigger room. Oh, that's a nice sized room, but I'd like hard floor instead of carpet. Send them another virtual tour. Perfect. Can I view that? So I'd saved myself 2 viewings.
Yeah.
And it was that, just doing viewings from my desk. I reduced my viewings by 50% to fill the same stock. So for me, that was a quite big cost reduction, time reduction. And I thought, why isn't everyone else doing it? Hence, Made Snappy. It was like taking that to the market because I thought it's good for viewers, good for agents. Why not?
So it's really interesting you talk about that, about the reduction of viewings, because I think this is something, you know, I mean, we were one of the first agents in the UK to adopt virtual tours. We adopted I Spy 360, I think it was called. Like 10 years ago, something like that. I can't remember exactly when, but it's pretty much when they launched. And I remember we did it initially primarily around our marketing, but then found that we couldn't really share it anywhere because none of the portals would list it and any of this sort of stuff. But like you say, it was a really nice way to, we introduced it as an interim viewing. Great, you've booked this viewing, have a look at the tour. We slightly did it backwards. We would still book the viewing and then put it in. But actually what we found early doors where we got really good uptake was we adopted them for our interim inspection reports. And because probably about 30-40% of our portfolio are clients' former homes, they have a bit more of an emotional attachment to that property, maybe than is at times healthy, but they have that emotional attachment. So just getting like a really generic kind of PDF report with like, yeah, it's fine, and a couple of photos of problems, we would find landlords would sometimes react poorly to. So they'd be like, oh, there's nothing showing how good it is. And we'd be like, no, everything else is fine. We're only here to tell you about the bad stuff. So when we started the interim tours, embedded, so we'd go and do the interim inspection, our PMs would shoot the tour. Our landlords absolutely loved that. So that was where we got really early doors traction on the virtual tours kind of thing. And like I said, I Spy 360 was, for us, was a really good early doors one, because I think when in fact, actually, before we did I Spy 360, we used, what were they called? They were acquired by Matterport very early doors. I think they were called Virtual Walkthrough or something like that. They built a very good algorithm about how you take the fisheye images and turn them into walkable tours. But I remember early doors. So we booked a virtual walkthrough package for a sales property we were doing in St Pancras. It was like a £2 million property. So we were like, it's fine. We don't mind spending some money to shoot that one property. Getting the client, I mean, it was a similar package to what you get now, right? The virtual tour, the stills, and a floor plan. If I remember correctly, it was nearly 500 quid plus VAT for that one property. Which was why we went and found I Spy 360, because I loved the concept of it. But for us as a letting agent, I mean, even as a sales agent, that was crazy money. But as a letting agent, I was like, we want to adopt this, but there's no way we're spending £500 a pop. And what I loved about I Spy 360 was it was that kind of bridging technology of, it wasn't all singing, all dancing. You took, I can't remember what camera it was. It was generic on the market. I think it was Panasonic, one with the fisheye on both sides. And it would shoot the donuts and you drop it into their platform and drag and drop. So it was, there was some work involved for you, but cost-wise, it was great. And it So yeah, we really love that journey. But I think it's really interesting you talked about viewings, because this is something I've always found fascinating in agency. Is the fact that there are still a lot of agents today that set viewing targets for their negotiators or property consultants or whatever you want to call them. And it's something I've never personally agreed with, because personally, I feel like if a negotiator or consultant is doing their job, actually, their job should not be to be out on the road all day, every day, showing lots of people, lots of things, 80% of which aren't what they want and they're not going to offer them, just for the sake of kind of being busy. Whereas, you know, as you highlighted, and it's something we've always practiced from day one with Base, is, you know, we really want to go and do one viewing at a property. I say one viewing, you know, we'll go for half an hour to an hour. We'll have 3 to 6 people attend in that time frame. They will have been carefully vetted, you know, and our marketing assets are super accurate. So by the time we get that, we know from that hour at the property, we're going to show 6 people, we're going to get 3 offers, all of which are viable, you know, and job done. That to me always makes a lot more business sense than having a negotiator visit that property 10 times over 2 weeks, you know, and all the hassle and fuss that comes with that, when they could be utilizing that time to nurture more applicants, nurture more deals, give landlords more updates, maintain that relationship. Yeah. So it's interesting to hear it, because as a rent to rent, you were effectively you were a landlord, right? In reality, you were kind of an interim landlord. And it's interesting that you saw that efficiency as well, but I'm still mystified that some agents don't see that today.
Said I've a lot of agents have done it, but there is this feeling of I want to go to the property and see people. Agents are salespeople at heart, but this, when you see the efficiency gains from it, it's crazy how much money is effectively being lost from doing that. So early on in the Made Snappy journey, we had one of our customers offered us money. So that was the only reason we took investment at Made Snappy, is because customers literally offered us money. And another customer came to us around the same time, and he said to me, between Made Snappy and Lead Pro, which nurtures and manages the leads and qualifies them, he saved over £30,000.
I remember we were one of Sam's earliest clients with Lead Pro, long before it got sold to Nurture. Simple thing, right? Does what it says on the tin.
And he said exactly what you've just said. He used to have like half an hour where 5 or 6 viewings would take place, but every single one of those viewings have been qualified using Lead Pro and had all seen a virtual tour, so they actually liked the place, so that when he turned up, he knew he was renting the place with one viewing. And this was 4 years ago.
Yeah. What do you need? It's just efficiency, right? Efficiency of operations. You know, it's, even if you could have maybe possibly got that landlord £50 a month more after umpteen viewings, when you factor out, you know, if the landlord loses 2 weeks to get that extra £50 a month, they're probably out of pocket anyway. For you as an agency, what you're making on that extra £600 a year, I mean, if you're lucky, you're making, you know, 60 quid, plus you're giving a neg and factor in petrol costs and everything else. It just doesn't make sense. You're best off getting a good deal efficiently and move on, right?
Quite an interesting trend in virtual tours at the moment, where it's a bit like a lot of companies have taken Lead Pro and added AI to it. So there's a few companies specifically, they are monitoring all the leads that come through the portal traffic overnight. And rather than the agent coming in the morning and having 40 leads to follow up and reply to, they've all gone through effectively a chatbot. It's qualified them, it's got them booked in for a viewing, and you insert virtual tours into that process. It's like an AI version of the two things happening at the same time. Looking at potentially going as far as, you've seen the virtual tour, would you like to put a deposit down? So the agent comes in the morning, instead of having like 10 viewings booked in, the next stage might be you've had 3 deposits put down.
Yeah, I think this raises an interesting debate, because I think obviously through COVID that happened a fair bit. However, I find I've found in our agency and talking to most agencies, we've taken quite a big step away from that. And I think because what you accept is that there is a lot more to a property than the room or the inside of the property itself. You know, there's the neighborhood, there's the transport links, there's, you know, it's also about whether the marketing assets are up to date as well. If that virtual tour was shot 2 years ago, does it accurately reflect the furniture, the condition, whatever else? So I think for most of the agents I know, or full service agents that I know, certainly, you know, they will have, like you touched on, a very kind of robust applicant qualification process to make sure that they're getting all that key data. And again, Lead Pro was great for that because you could customize exactly what was important to your business. You know, then with decent marketing assets, you're going, right, guys, you have looked at the photos and the floor plan and the virtual tour and the video. So you're sure this is definitely, you know, ticking the box. Great. But that final in-person viewing, it's about a lot more. And I think if you manage the property, or if you're a hands-on landlord, it's also about meeting those people and getting to know what they're like. And I think particularly coming into the Renters' Rights Bill era with indefinite tenancies, I think that is going to be even more important going forwards, that landlords and agents are meeting and kind of assessing people on a personality trait basis, not just can they afford it and is it what they want? Because you can place 3 different tenants in a property on exactly the same income, and one can be the delight, one can be all right, and one can be a nightmare, but on paper they're identical. So yeah, the personality thing, I think I'd like to think any like lettings or especially managing agent watching this will agree, like that personality vetting is a really important part of that process.
Definitely.
So we've done cool software, we've done rent to rent, we've pivoted into your own virtual camera business, and then where does the Glue Dog light bulb appear?
Shortly after I started Made Snappy.
I was going to say, I don't think this took too long.
No, my biggest problem is I see problems. My brain doesn't stop turning around, like thinking about it, until I know how you would probably solve it.
Yeah.
But the problem is solving problems can take years if you start a business. So I've had to be extremely patient with Made Snappy because I know I couldn't pursue some of these other things that I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So Glue Dog's been in the bank since 2020.
And also, like you said, just because you know you want to solve a problem doesn't mean you're ready to. I mean, that sounds very similar to us with Depository, right? We know exactly what that, well, I say exactly what that roadmap, we know exactly what we want to achieve. But like you said, patience is a huge part of it, and prioritizing, because you have to find that balance of solving problems and commercially driving the business forward and everything else. So
can't do business number 2 if business number one doesn't succeed. I mean, business number 1's given me a little bit more credibility. The investors have seen like returns, like quite substantial returns. I've done it. I've pulled the business off. It's making profit. It's good size. I'm not even running the business anymore. I've got a senior management team in place, and that really helps bringing into business number 2 because I'm a little bit known in the industry. Even if people don't know me, they've known Made Snappy.
Yeah,
it kind of helps. If I'd have pursued Glue Dog back then, Made Snappy would have fallen apart, and Glue Dog would never have happened. But yeah, so Made Snappy, Glue Dog. It was around 2020 when COVID hit, and I was watching the portal wars happen, and the new portals. I was thinking, how are they getting integrated into CRMs? And it was kind of that that's made me start thinking about CRM integration and one single system that connected everything up. But also, when I was trying to buy software for Made Snappy, I had the same problem. I phone system we were using wasn't very good, kept on cutting out, quite low quality. So we ended up going through 3 or 4 phone systems before we found one that actually was good, didn't drop out, like recordings, had all the functionality we wanted. We did the same thing with CRMs. We were kind of, we found a CRM we wanted, but then when we tried to connect the two together, it was like, no, they don't integrate. So our phone system doesn't integrate with our CRM system. Same with marketing systems. And so it was kind of like a bit of a Made Snappy problem of sales and marketing systems generally with us, plus also seeing an industry specific issue that kind of drove the business plan and thinking about Blue Dog. But yeah, it's just sat in it for 4 years before I could do anything about it.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think, sorry, excuse me. I mean, you know, an integrated ecosystem is you're not the first person to spot that issue. It's really great to see someone tackle it. You know, I think, God, I mean, I think pretty much since we started adopting tech in base, 15, 16, 17 years ago, you know, already, I don't think anyone really talked about them as integrations back then, but we definitely talked about the desire of wanting products to want to talk to one another. And I think as time has gone on, that's matured. And I think what's really interesting to see, Charlie Lambden of Best Agent. Now, you know, funnily enough, this morning on my memories in Facebook popped up an event Charlie held 6 years ago today, down in South London, which was at the time something he labelled Best Agent Marketplace. And fundamentally, it wasn't really different to what you've proposed. His idea was this bridge system, slightly different business model. The suppliers build in, the CRMs build in, and I think if I remember correctly, his business model at the time was like he would take like 10% of revenue, you know, and that was how it funded, you know, and early doors that would hopefully pay for it, and down the line it become something big. What was fascinating was the buzz around that from the offset when Charlie kind of proposed this was phenomenal. It scared the bejesus out of some of the CRMs. I mean, I genuinely think that was the primary driver behind Repit building their Foundations App Store, because they, you know, it's no secret they make a decent amount of money through their revenue share partners. And so, you know, that was a business risk, and they pivoted slightly from their business model and built out Repit Foundations. And I think it also, I mean, there was already CRMs like Desres and Agent OS, and I'm sure there are others. Those are, for some reason, the two that always spring to mind with me. But I know they were taking a very forward-looking kind of open API approach. They were one of the really early adopters on Zapier. Again, I think off the back of that conversation, I was always kind of surprised that never maintained momentum. But something you and I have talked about is, I think the interesting thing about building this ecosystem is there is definitely the requirement for a substantial level of trust or buy-in to the people involved. And I think, you know, with the greatest respect to Charlie, who is a mate of mine, it's not that people don't trust. I don't think it's a question of trust with him. It's, as you said, talking about your commercial history and kind of delivering. Yeah, for whatever reason, it just didn't win the kind of support and buy-in that, got to be honest, at the time. I mean, we were about a year away from launching Depository at the time. So we had it within base and we were working on that. And for me, as a kind of someone coming into the supplier space, a bit like when you and I started talking, I was like, this is just a no-brainer. Like, you know, you're probably not going to get the buy-in from the big boys, from the Repit, MRI, and Zoopla at the time, because they were pretty, it's called a siloed, ring-fenced operations. But generally, the rest of the market space, I think, was kind of open for a solution. I mean, I remember around then talking with Brief Your Market, you know, and I remember them telling me at the time that they had over 50 individual integrations that they'd built into different agency-related products. You know, and I remember being like, what did that cost? You know, even if you spend 10 grand, and you and I both know integrations can often cost a hell of a lot more than 10 grand. Even at 10 grand, that's £500,000 worth of integrations right there, before you factor in updates and maintenance and you know, adding new features and blah blah blah. So yeah, I think it's one of the things that surprises me is it's taken us this long to get to someone like you packaging it up right. But I think it's absolutely a no-brainer in terms of, from a supplier perspective. You know, I mean, you and I have talked about this at length. Our CRM integrations, we built one for PropCo as part of our contract deal with LRG nearly 4 years ago. We're building one for Reapit at the moment. Those were massive projects. I mean, our Reapit project is what we're now on month 7 of that build. Now, part of that is because we've been building out architecture to more easily deliver partnerships with the likes of Gludo. But that's a 7-month project, which is going to cost us 6 figures. And, you know, even if you halve that, even if you say, right, the architecture we've built now is going to halve that on projects going forward, for us to look at 10 CRMs, you know, again, at 50 grand a pop and 3 months a pop to deliver it, let's say, that's a lot of money, and that's a lot of time building. So yeah, for me, you guys are just an absolute no-brainer. Talk to me a little bit about how you guys landed on your business model, because fundamentally you're not really looking at billing suppliers. You're really looking at saying to agents, look, you're the beneficiary here. You get to plug this into that and that into this for X amount per month. What was that journey like, figuring out, because all of these things have to have some sort of commercial underpinning. How did you guys land on that kind of business model? Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Sorry, we just get a little lag in your audio dropping in. It's all good.
To remember the thought process behind it, but I think it was similar to, like, I was looking at Zapier as what's the basis for middleware. That's essentially what it is, middleware that connects things up. And the way they charged was, you want things all connected up, then you pay your Zapier subscription of this amount, and that does all the connecting. It was kind of built off the back of that thought process there. And it was also, there's so much value to these integrations. When you ask agents about their biggest problems with tech, the 2 things that they generally come up with is lack of integration and having to log into 20 different systems. And so it is the biggest problem in tech that I think it was the Voice of the Agent for the last couple of years running. And when surveys are done, this is the biggest problem. This is the biggest problem. Surely, like, people are willing to pay for it. So that was why we went down the model of, you want it fixed, then we can just charge you a subscription for it. But it was also, let's make it cheap as possible. We want to solve an industry issue. It's been, like, people were saying to us when I first started talking to them about it, like, someone should have done this 10 years ago, was what one person said to me. And I can't remember where I was going with that. My brain's just gone. But yeah, we knew it was a big industry issue that people wanted solved. But yeah, just going back to your point on the cost as well, like, you're talking about the upfront cost of building it, like 6 figures to get one connection, and then maybe obviously a lot less than that now you've built the infrastructure. By building onto all these different systems, we had a lot of friction in upgrading the tech, because suddenly you want to add a new feature to your product, and you've got to go back and look at all these 20 integrations that you've built and figure out how to upgrade every single one of them. And that might require conversation with the CRMs to do an update, and like that, just that coordination. We had a supplier come back to us recently that decided they were just going to go. They said their natural fit was connecting onto CRMs directly. Called me up after a few months and said, Mark, I've just realised we're going to have to hire 2 people.
Yeah. I mean, I've got to say, we've got, what have we got at Depository now? We've got, I think, 8 inventory partners. We've got 4 deposit scheme integrations, 2 CRMs, and a utility. So what's that, like? I don't know, 15. Let's call it 15 integrations. My heart skips a beat every time I see an email in my inbox from one of our integrated partners going software update or system update. I'm like, because every time I'm like, you know, like you say, you don't know. Is that going to change something? Is that going to change everything? You know, we've had some big ones as well. TDS have entirely moved their kind of CRM system they use. So we've had to rebuild our integrations with them. No Letting Go built an entirely new capture software system. So we've had to totally, well, we didn't have to completely rebuild, but we had to tweak what we'd built to them before. They largely built to the same framework. But yeah, you know, it exposes you fundamentally to a huge amount of risk, because also once your clients are loving that integration, you know, and benefiting from everything that it delivers, that becomes an expectation, right? This is how it works. I plug these things in, it does X, Y, Z. So they're probably not going to be that interested when you go like, oh yeah, they rolled out an update 2 weeks ago, and yeah, we could be able to fix it in about like 2 months' time. So yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm slightly mystified that this never kind of got picked up sooner, but I think it's great, both as an agent and as a supplier. I just, it takes away that friction point, like you said. And I think, yes, there is obviously going to be a small cost, because I think the charges you propose to agents are super reasonable. There is a small cost to the solution you deliver to an agent, but the uplift in what they get, the benefit that they get, way outweighs that cost. And I think it also instantly resolves whether that agent genuinely isn't adopting that product because it doesn't integrate with their CRM, or whether that's just an excuse that they use. Because it's just an easy way to say, no, I don't want your product. But rather than go, I don't want your product, go, oh, yeah, come back to me when it integrates with the CRM. So look, I think it's an interesting one. So let's talk CRM so far. So who are kind of like your pioneering CRMs? Who are the ones who are like, have been on this early doors and have already kind of built quite an established integration with you guys?
So last year, before we even started the business, I went around talking to CRMs to see if this was even viable, because if they weren't interested, then the business just wouldn't have happened. We had I had a surprising amount of positive responses from the CRMs, because I had a few people warning me that this was going to be too hard to do. We've had some great relationships with CRMs, like Apex 27 was the first one we probably had a chat with. They've done us like 40-50 updates. They're very on board with Dog. It was surprising a little bit, the interest from the CRMs. I think some of the CRMs are, particularly some of the big ones that you've talked about, don't like concept because they've got walls up and they're trying to monetize integrations as much as possible. So there's been a little bit of challenges down that end of the market, but there's a lot of new CRMs that have popped up that see the issues their side as well, because if they have to deal with 100 suppliers connecting onto them, they have to give them sandbox accounts, they have to show them how the CRM works, they have to support them, they have to integrations don't get built right the first time round. They never get built right the first time round.
No.
You try to build onto someone else's system that you don't understand, and even people connect onto us, they never build it right the first time round. So there is that back and forth of supplier support on the CRM side with getting integrations. But yeah, so Apex 27, really good, done loads of updates. They're very important to the concept. They just want to make sure their customers can have the best tech. If your tech doesn't talk to it with other tech, then, I mean, that's the whole point. It's meant to automate stuff, and it can't do that if it doesn't talk.
And that CRMs have so much on their plate, right? I think it's really interesting when I talk to agents, you know, I've often spoken to agents and they're like, oh, why don't the CRMs just build this and just build that? I'm like, dude, don't ever take the word just in front of those your CRM's devs. I'm like, there is no just. And I'm like, this allows your CRM to focus on what you really need from a CRM. So really good database, hopefully really good data and reporting, you know, your compliance, your really core functionality. And sure, in the future, they might build out this, they might build out that. But for now, why not plug this stuff in? And rather than build a half-rate version, rather than say, oh, we can do what, I don't know, for example, we can do what Fixflow does, but building something with half the functionality in it that Fixflow has, because it's a specialist and a very well-established product. You know, do you want your CRM to build like a half-rate product and charge you half the amount of money? Or do you want to plug in the product that really delivers on the solution and is totally entwined? And I think for most agents, that answer's pretty obvious.
One of the interesting things I kind of discovered doing this was, before I started, people were moaning about CRMs. Like, a lot of suppliers were moaning about CRMs. We're trying to get this integration, we can't have it. When I started talking to the CRMs, one thing that was really interesting was, it was almost the impression that suppliers gave me of CRMs was like, not interested, like, no, we're not doing this. They actually really want to build stuff, improve user experience. There's actually a massive willingness on the CRM side to do it. I think there's just technical challenges as well with resource and challenges with roadmap. Everyone's got a really busy tech roadmap, 6 to 12 months already locked down, and trying to get in it is really hard because you've got 20 customers asking for this and that's getting done, but the 5 customers asking for this other thing, that's not getting done.
They're still a business, right? I think, you know, I think it's really interesting you say that, because obviously, you know, we've been on that journey with Depository. We've had lots of chats with CRMs over the period of time. And I would say, like you said, generally, I've found those conversations incredibly welcoming, incredibly positive about working together. Part of the reason a lot of those haven't happened is actually down to us. Our resource hasn't been capable to do everything we would have loved to have done. And also because, like you said, same with the CRM, same with us, you only have so much dev resource. And so what are you investing it on? You're still a commercial entity. So, you know, for the CRMs, they could build 10 different partner integrations and no one bloody uses them. You know, so there's no customer improvement, there's no revenue partnerships, there's no money coming out of that, and all you've done is, you know, is splurge 200,000-400,000 pound in dev salary on building stuff that agents told you they wanted, but they aren't really using, and it is because it doesn't work maybe how they thought it would, and you know, blah blah blah. So yeah, I think my experience with the CRM landscape is that that I've always found them very open to partnerships, but for them it's that challenge of, look, there's only so much resource we can apply to partnerships each year, so we've got to, you know, how many of our existing clients use your system, how many do you think are going to come on as a result of it, you know, and that's fair enough. We've all got people's salaries to pay, and you know, some of us have investors to feed back to, and everything else. And yeah, I think
the most challenging part has actually been with suppliers. So all these complaints about CRMs and not doing stuff, actually, when I've been doing things, my experience was it's actually worse on the supplier side. Suppliers saying, oh, we need this to build an integration. It gets built and then they never connect. And this is something CRMs, I'm sure, have experienced a lot, whereas suppliers really excited about doing the integration and then it never happens, and the CRM's just wasted some dev work. But yeah.
I mean, we've definitely had that as well. And look, and also there is that incredibly frustrating nature of dev, which is trying to deliver a very specific project within a very specific time frame is often hard. And the bigger the project, the more complex it is, the harder it is to predict that. Case in point, we thought we'd be delivering Repeat in 4 to 5 months. So, you know, there we go. There's an example of that. And I think that's the other thing. It's the challenge of matching up those resources. And again, I think what's great with you guys, and this is why we've very happily jumped on board with you guys, and I can't wait for us to start building that all out in the next few weeks, is that, yeah, for us, you know, we can just crack on, get that done, put it in place, and then really, you know, alongside you guys, we can just nurture those relationships that you have with the CRMs, just to go, guys, this is here, these are the benefits, This is what your clients have. You know, we can look at our existing clients and those customer bases. We also know which agents on our database are looking to move CRM at the moment. So, you know, and who they're looking at, because I'll quite often get looped into those conversations for my 10 pence on, you know, what works and what doesn't, and what's good and what's bad. And it's really nice to be able to say, well, look, you know, one of your frustrations with your current CRM is that a lot of the products you don't use are integrated, but, you know, I know you guys use us and these 3 other products, and I know through GlueDoc you can have all of those plugged in. So yeah, I think it's a really exciting time. I think, you know, with everything we've got going on at the moment with AI, but also, you know, with you guys kind of solving that integration puzzle, you know, where we can be in the next kind of 12 to 24 months as an industry, I think it's going to be really exciting, really, really exciting. So I'm hoping to see a lot more suppliers really engage with you guys and really buy in and start building stuff. And, you know, and in turn, seeing the CRMs, you know, as you said, you're already getting good engagement from the CRMs, but seeing the CRMs leverage that and build some really cool partnerships. I think it's going to be super exciting.
The engagement from the suppliers either. We've spoken with over 100 suppliers in the last 12 months. They've all said, like, this sounds amazing, let's do it. It all comes back to dev resource. A lot of suppliers struggle with dev resource, or they've got 6 to 12 months on their roadmap. We've had suppliers start connecting and get pulled off because something urgent's come up. Like quite a few times I've heard what you said before of someone's done a software update and they've now got a patch and integration that's already built. And so those are probably the biggest challenges. But what's changed with us in the last, say, 2 months is we've come up with this Chrome extension idea, and we can now connect up any supplier that's got an API.
Yeah,
and that's been a game changer for us because we've suddenly got a wait list for our connections now. We've never had an issue with suppliers saying this is a great idea. It's more of been an operational implementation issue.
Actual work.
Solved that in the last couple of months. We've got so many big partner suppliers coming through now that it's a very exciting time.
That's really cool.
Just very busy.
Apart from the depository, are you allowed to say who any of those are?
Yeah, we've got so when we came up with the Chrome extension idea, that was literally last month. So last month we tied up 5 key partners, partly for the property market launch. So the depository was one of them. Got Lemon and Lime Interiors.
Yeah.
We've got Flatfare, which does 0 deposit. We've got Cool Switch One, which is a phone system, where we're working with Global 4 on that, which is a IT.
That last one?
So it's Global 4 as an IT management company, telecoms company that are working with us to get one of their phone systems that they work with connected. And then the Estes.
Nice.
So
what's really nice there is you've got a really good spread, right? You've got comms, you've got 30 conclusions, you've got reviews, you've got, who else was in there? I can't remember, but you know, Flatfare, deposit alternatives. Yeah, really cool. It's really cool. And look, it is a no-brainer. And I think you need, the more you get, the more you'll get, right? As soon as we start seeing some of these dropping in and agents going, oh wow, you know, this is it. For like £100 a month, I can be plugging in XYZ and this transforms my team's life. You know, and I think interestingly, like as I touched on, we won't talk too much about this because I've talked about it enough in other podcasts, but obviously with AI and everything that's coming with that, you know, that's going to be really interesting because, you know, you've got bespoke AI products for our industry. You know, they'll be able to plug in via you guys, but also I think in time you'll also be able to look at the big AI engines out there and potentially offer little plugins yourself for those, because quite a lot of those have quite simple plugin options there. So yeah, I think, you know, like you said, it's a really exciting time. I think the next 6 to 12 months is going to see you guys transform a lot more from a concept to a reality, across a load of different touch points. So you're going to get a lot of different agents and suppliers in different marketplaces seeing a substantial shift in how your products work, speak to each other, how your team use them. Super exciting.
And so we've had less suppliers go live than we expected, partly because they just keep on getting pulled off projects. So we've probably got 10 actually live, another 15 very close to going live. This is them connecting onto us. And then we started building up there where we're in the driving seat. We do the integrations. So we've got another 5 to 10 of them coming through. So we'll be
the 10 you've got live, is that primarily on the CRM side?
No, these are suppliers. These are all suppliers.
So let's give a shout out to those suppliers who are already in the system. So who have we already got? I'm going to put you on the spot now. I think
the website.
Yeah, your website, mate. There's nothing wrong with that. I do this now. We're getting to a point with our partners list where I'm like, is that everyone? Bear with me a second. So yeah, let's give a shout out to those kind of champion innovators who've really actually got on board and actually done the goods. Yep. So who have you got so far?
So we've got KPR Global, which is inventories and inspection software. I've got Keys App, which is key management. Got Candidly, which is vendor onboarding or sale onboarding. Made Snappy 360, so that's my other business with the floor plans. I've got Movely, which is material information.
Yeah.
Movo, which is utility switching. Nestflow, which is an AI lead nurturing tool. Vinny, which is they do AI lead nurturing, but they've got a broader set of tools.
Oh yeah,
AI is the property management. AI cool. Property management, yeah. Visitor chat, which is like a system that sits on your website. It's like a chat system and pushes leads into your CRM. I've got WinkCloud, which is like a video system. It helps you produce really good videos for walkthroughs on property. And then we've got about 15, which are just feel like on the edge of going live as well. So we're about to more than double.
A really nice spectrum. Even those 10 you've got live, again, they're pretty much all different things, different elements, different pain points within the business. How cool. Really exciting.
So it's getting there. And I think with us in the driving seat on the dev work, that's going to accelerate. That's probably going to triple the speed at which suppliers come through. Because we could do 4, 5, 6 suppliers a month now.
Nice.
On top of the ones connecting onto us. So very exciting. And I wish I got a little bit more sleep than I do now.
Your own baby though, Mark, so I can't help you with that. You have to build an app for that. Where's the best place for people to go to find out more? Is it just your website?
Yeah, if they go to the website gluedog.ai, they can register the CRM, they can look at the suppliers we've got on board and the ones coming soon. And we're also happy to jump on a call and just find out what suppliers they've got and see if we can get them connected as well.
And are you guys going to be, what's the next conference? Kerfuffle conference?
Kerfuffle conference, yeah. Yep.
You guys there? Fantastic. We'll be there as well. So yeah, we'll be revealing our new AI tool and our Reaper integration. But it'd be great to see you guys there as well. So if you're going to KerfuffleCon, and if you're not, why aren't you? Get down there. Go and talk to Mark and Vicky at GlueDog and go and find out more. Get on their website, engage, talk to your key suppliers, see who's on there, talk to your favorite suppliers in your business now, and talk to them about GlueDog. Because genuinely, as a supplier and agent myself, this is a no-brainer, right? From both an agent's perspective and the supplier perspective, you know, as I said to Mark, we've already in our fairly young age business, we've already got 15, 16 partner integrations, and that is already a huge burden on our business. So we are all in with doing as much as we can with GlueDog over the next kind of 6 to 12 months and seeing what that looks like. But as agents, your suppliers will listen to you guys. So go out and talk to them and get them to engage with Mark and Vic at GlueDog and start understanding what this means and get them to understand what it means to you as an agent, you know, where that big shift is. Because, you know, in 6, 12, 18 months, you know, if we can help these guys build a kind of integrated platform with 30, 40, 50 suppliers in, maybe more, what an exciting space that would be. And the more suppliers we get in, the more buy-in we're going to get from CRMs. So the more we're going to see that CRM buy-in expand, and the more we're going to see the existing CRMs develop what they've got with GlueDog, making these possibilities greater. And we then get to we then, you know, potentially get to a marketplace which is a bit like the app marketplace on your smartphone, right? Because right now it's not. And I think that's the thing, is agents often think that, you know, when we talk about integrations, you just download an app and put in a couple of login details and hey presto, you know, it's up and working. And that's the way it should be for an agent. But we've never really had that as an open marketplace. But if we can really push suppliers and CRMs to engage with you guys, within 6, 12, 18, 24 months, we can have this incredible ecosystem where you can be on a ton of different CRMs and you can work with a ton of different suppliers and you can just seamlessly plug in what you want. Mark's touched on the Chrome extension that they're plugging in as well, where it gives you that, it potentially saves you skipping from dashboard to dashboard. It just gives you a snapshot view of like the latest key actions within your kind of central product partners. Yeah, all super exciting. Mark, I think we've waffled on enough there. Was there anything you wanted to add in before we go?
I think you've sold my business better than I could.
That's all good, man. Look, I get it. Good products, good solutions. Yeah. You know, they deserve to be shouted about. So, you know, agents, talk to your suppliers, talk to Mark, CRMs, talk to Mark, and let's see where we can get things in 10, 12, 15, 18 months, whatever it is. Mark, thank you so much for your time today. Been an absolute pleasure. I can't wait for us to get our API built out with you guys at Depository. It's going to be super exciting. And I suppose all that's left to say is see you in, what is it? 2.5 weeks? No, 2 weeks today, isn't it? 2 weeks today, KerfuffleCon at Wembley. See you there.
Good. Cheers, Christian. Thanks for having me.
All right, mate. Thanks a lot. Cheers, pal. Bye-bye.